just thought that I would film a series about calligraphy, just the art of calligraphy, how to actually do the art, like not too much on the history or anything like that, but mainly how to do calligraphy. I've been doing calligraphy for almost 10 years, and it's a really peaceful art. It's really beautiful, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. You're going to need a guide sheet. I provided a free one in the description box. So you're going to need a guide sheet. We'll talk more about that in a second. You'll need some ink. This is a brand that I recommend. It's Moon Palace ink. You'll need something to put the ink in. This is just something I got from Michael's that in the craft section. So you only need one nib, but I have two lists. This one here is a Nico G nib, and that one's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more forgiving if you have a heavy hand, or if you write a little bit harder, I would suggest starting with that. The second one here, this is a Principle Nib. Then you're gonna need a holder. This is an oblique holder. And then you'll need some type of dip, some type of dropper so that you can put water in, and then a piece of paper towel, maybe a couple pieces of paper towel. One piece of paper towel to clean the nib and to keep the nib clean, and then you'll need the second piece to prep the nib, which we'll talk about here shortly. Another thing that I wanna mention that you might need is this is a piece of vellum paper, and the way that you'll use this is, let's say that you're writing on the first part of the guide sheet. But this will help, this vellum piece of paper will help you when you're writing, for your hand to glide more smoothly across the paper. So it'll just help for your hand to glide more smoothly across paper. So that's something that you might consider getting as well. It's just a vellum piece of paper. You can also use just any smooth piece of paper that you have, which you'll definitely want to make sure that you're using smooth paper, because you want to write on smooth paper. You don't want to write on paper that's not smooth, but we'll talk about that in a second. As you're going about this series with me, just a quick reminder to have grace on yourself. Sometimes when you're starting a new art, especially when you're starting a new art, but typically when you're just starting anything new, you may not be able to make the letter forms that I'm making. I've been doing calligraphy for almost 10 years, so you may not be able to do them immediately, but I just want to show you some of the practice that I had in the earlier, my earlier years. This is from 2018, this is from 2019, and that's why I always put the date. So this top page is from just the other day, and I always include the date up here at the top, and then you always know, and I'll zoom in on this in a minute, but I always include the date so that way you'll be able to track your progress. So this is just the other day of me just playing around, just practicing, but you can see from 2018 to 2026, there's a drastic difference in the ability to not only control the nib, but actually what the letter forms look like. So give yourself some grace as you're learning a new art. You'll be able to make the letters that you want to make, and they'll be able to look like the way that you want them to look if you continue and press on with it. In terms of best practices, it's good to know the anatomy of the guide sheet. So this is what's called the X height, and it's indicated by the X. This line here is the baseline. This is where you'll start all of your lowercase letters, always at the baseline. This is the waistline. And so the distance between the waistline and the baseline is the X height, which is why you have the X here. Everything that extends above the waistline is an ascender. You have the first ascender here and the second ascender here. And then everything that extends below the baseline is called the descender. So you have the first descender here, the second descender here. So again, you have second descender, first ascender, waistline, baseline, first descender, and then second descender. What I've done is I have some ink here, and then I have a nib here. This one's a Nico G nib, and then this is just some ink, some Moon Palace ink. I'll show you what it looks like when the nib is not prepped. There's a glossy coating that's going to be on your nib. It's on every nib. And I'm just going to dip it in the ink, and you can see that the ink isn't adhering to the nib. Instead, it's kind of gliding off. So hopefully you can see that. What we want to do is you want to take just something in your house. I'm sure you have a mild cleanser. You will just spray it on either the paper towel or spray it on the nib. And let me move this out of the way so I don't accidentally spill it. And then you just want to wipe the nib down really, really good. That's the goal. The goal is to get the coating off of the nib, and you want to wipe it really, really good and clean it really well on the front and on the back. And try not to use your hand, like try not to allow your hand to touch it, because if your hand touches it, then you may, you know, get oils and ink, oils and like lotions and butters and stuff on the nib. So you want to just, not aggressively, but you just want to make sure that you're wiping the nib. And then when you're handling the nib after you've wiped it, try to handle it with the paper towel. While I'm still handling this with the paper towel, I'll grab the holder. You can see there's a little slot here. And then what I'm going to do is just place this in the slot and then just slide it in. And then I have it peeking out just a little bit. We'll bring it up a little bit. So that's how you would insert it into the nib. And then if I bring the ink back, and if I dip the ink or I dip the nib into the ink, you can see that it now coats. So it coats the front of it and it coats the back of it. And that's the way that you want your nib, this is how you want your nib to look, because then it will be coated and it will be properly prepped, rather, not just coated, it'll be prepped. Okay, I've zoomed back out a little bit. This is just regular photocopy paper. This is paper that you would get you probably already have in your printer. This paper on the left, this is just regular photocopy paper. And the one that I have on the right is a bit thicker. It's premium paper. This one is coated and it's HP premium paper, versus this on the left-hand side. This is just regular paper. You can see how flimsy and how see-through this paper is. You don't want to write on this. You don't want to write on something that is photocopy paper, because this paper is very thin for calligraphy, especially if you're using ink. And then the other thing is, for the pointed pen, this will snag, so it will not, you know, make your writing experience graceful. You'll want to get something that's different. So let's move this to the side. For beginners, I think this HP Premium, this is a pretty good paper to start on. You can get it fairly quickly. It's on Amazon. You can get it. The only difference with this is sometimes, you know, the paper does snag onto the nib sometimes, and this has a coating on it. So it is something that you can use, and typically, you know, calligraphers will recommend this. I'm going to recommend something different if you know, based on what your finances are and based on what you have in your house. If you have this in your house, 32 pounds, then use this first, because it'll allow you to, you know, just test the art to see if it's something that you even want to keep doing. If you want to splurge and you want to go a different route, better paper suggestions that I have which this one's good. The other thing about this one is it has a coating on it, so your ink is going to behave in a different way than it would if this was uncoated. And if you're planning on doing commissions or weddings or things like that, then probably most of what you're going to be writing on will be uncoated, especially if you're envelope addressing. Typically those are uncoated. And so you want to and typically those are textured too, but you want to write on something that's smooth so that it allows for you to have a more graceful practice, and so it allows you to build up the muscle memory. Canson, you can use the Canson. I think the Canson is good. This is a smooth paper. It is also, this one's a little bit too heavy, so don't go 80 pounds. You can go maybe 24, 28, or 32 pounds. Don't go 80 because that's too heavy. But Canson, this is a good brand. I prefer this brand over the HP because, like I said, sometimes the HP wants to snag. And then this brand as well, hopefully it's called Rhodia. And this is only 21.3 pounds. And it's not a good page, but this paper is very, very smooth. Very, very smooth to write with. The biggest suggestion that I have with how you choose to hold the holder, whatever tool you're planning on using, is you just want to hold it. You don't want to, aggressively grip it. You just want to be very delicate with holding it. I can lift my finger and I will still be able to make strokes. You want to be very delicate because there's not a lot of pressure that you need on the tool. So even with that said, let's just bring this back. So I'm gonna zoom in. Copperplate calligraphy is always written on a 55-degree angle. You want to turn the paper so that it is comfortable for you to write at a 55-degree angle. Or turning the paper so that I can write at this 55-degree angle. And then again, the other suggestion, remember, that I would have is you may want to add a piece of vellum paper, or just there's blotter paper that you can add that will allow you to have smoothness when you're doing calligraphy. This will come in handy more so with the capital letters. With the lowercase letters, you'll mainly use like your wrist movement and your finger movement. With the capital letters, you will use your whole hand. In this photo, really quickly, you can see that his elbows are just off the desk. You want to make sure that your elbows are off the desk because, again, we're going to do some warm-ups here in a couple minutes. Some of these warm-ups will require full arm movement. So you'll want to have like a good stance and a good position and posture. So insert that photo, and this is what that looks like. Before we talk about thick versus thin, we're going to talk about handwriting, writing versus calligraphy. They're two different things. And you want to kind of get this in your mind so that way it helps you to get the muscle memory. So this is handwriting. That's handwriting or cursive handwriting. This is not what we're doing. If you can see that I'm not really picking up the pencil. I'm just writing. So not picking up the pencil, that's right. This is cursive handwriting. Different from calligraphy. Calligraphy is about making strokes. It's all about making strokes. So this is an entry stroke, this is an oval, and this is an underturn. That's letter A. So letter A consists of 3 different strokes: an entry stroke, an oval, and an underturn. We'll talk about this next week, but I just want you to kind of get this in your mind that calligraphy is not handwriting. It's about making strokes. I mentioned, I'm going to take my pointer finger off and I'm going to show you how simple it is to make a downstroke. If you look and you'll see, and this is just me showing you how much pressure, just little pressure I'm putting on this. Very little pressure, very little pressure. And even going up, almost no pressure, almost no pressure. Let's come in a little bit more. Let's just come in a little bit more. So again, no pressure. Let's re-ink. This is there's a little bit of pressure here. And then on these upstrokes, there's no pressure. So on your downstrokes, you always have just a little bit of pressure. On your upstrokes, you'll have barely any pressure. There's almost no pressure. The other thing that we want to think about is the reason why we have this is because we want to make sure that when we're writing, when we're doing calligraphy, we're always doing calligraphy at a 55-degree angle. So for instance, if I were to make this circle, that's not at a 55-degree angle. Why? Because if it was at a 55-degree angle, it would be following this path. So this is at a 55-degree angle. And it's different from this. As you can see, this is just a circle and it's off axis. We always want to stay on axis while we're doing calligraphy. I'm gonna start with pencil, doing some warm-ups, and then I'm gonna move to the calligraphy pen. And so another best practice or another tip is every time you do calligraphy, you always want to warm up. You always want to practice. It's just like any other art. You always want to warm up. And think about if you were playing a sport, you wouldn't just go out cold playing that sport. You would warm up. So I'm going to show you, we'll do a vertical oval, a horizontal oval, a vertical figure 8, a horizontal figure 8, a long form horizontal figure eight. So we'll start with the horizontal or the vertical, excuse me, figure eight. And what I like to do with the vertical one is I want to stay within this little one quadrant, this space. And typically I'll go from the top of the second ascender line to the baseline. And what you want to do is just lightly press the tool. You don't want to be, we're not, even on the downstrokes, we're not putting any pressure on this. We're just making these ovals. And the reason that you're doing this is to get your hand familiar with just how much pressure and how little pressure you actually need in order to do the art. So we'll do this. Maybe we'll do, I don't know, about 30. Then we'll go over to the side. We'll do more just vertical ovals. And it's also getting your hand used to the art of the oval as well, because a lot of what we'll be writing has a lot to do with ovals, especially once it gets to flourishing. So we're just making vertical ovals. And for your homework, you'll want to do a full line of these. So a full line of vertical ovals. And then I'm going to come here. So we're going to do about from here to here. So we're going to take up 2 spaces. We're going to go from the first ascender line to the baseline, and we're going to do some vertical, some horizontal ovals. Again, we're not putting any pressure on this. We're just doing horizontal ovals, no pressure. Again, we're taking up two spaces. We're going from the first ascender line to the baseline. And you'll do a full row of those. Then we're going to go again, same distance from that we did the vertical one with. Same distance, we're going to go from the second ascender line to the baseline with some figure eights. And we may extend that to the first descender line. And we're just going to do some figure eights. We'll do the same thing with the figure eights horizontally, except we'll use 3 spaces. And when I'm doing this, so let me try, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Let me try zooming out. When I'm doing this, I'm not doing this. I'm not using just my finger. You want to move your hand. You want to use your forearm. This is why your forearm is off the edge of the desk for this one, especially for the figure eight. You want to use your forearm. For the vertical one, for the oval one, you may just choose to use your wrist and your fingers. Wrist and your fingers for this. Same thing for the horizontal one. You may just choose to use your wrist and your fingers. I would recommend, though, trying to incorporate your forearm, because that will it's going to help your hand to not tire as well, so that you're not just sitting there doing this. This is what we don't want. And then the last one is we're going to take up the entire row with a figure eight. And you'll definitely use your full forearm for this. Another one that you may want to do is you're just making light strokes of just straight up and down, following along the 55-degree slant. So you're just going up and down. Four row of these on the nib. 4 row of these horizontal ovals. And you'll essentially do all the ones that we just did with the nib. And after you've done a row of these, you should have the amount of pressure that you're going to need on this. Let's zoom back in. The amount of pressure you need is minimal. I'm even going to take my finger up, and you can still see that it's making, I'm able to get the position of the warm-up again. And then this is going to prepare. So next week, what we'll do is I'll give you a preview of what we're going to do. We're going to do the foundation strokes, which includes an entry stroke, which includes the downstroke, includes the overturn stroke, the underturn stroke, the oval, the compound stroke, ascender loop. Again, it's an ascender loop because we're ascending, and then the descender loop. That one could have been a little bit better, but you get the gist. We'll practice these 8 foundation strokes next week, but for this week, I would say just do a complete, maybe take 15 to 20 minutes every single day to just do some of these. Do each of these warm-ups. Those are the tools that you're going to need. Those are some of the suggestions that I have for you. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you guys next week.